Welcome to the Wild and Free series, a collection of down-to-earth conversations with leaders in authenticity, self-awareness, and service to the world. I'm Katie Hess, founder of LOTUSWEI. May these conversations awaken your inner explorer and open the doorway to more freedom, bravery, and wildness.
Hi,
Love
beautiful.
it.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Oh my gosh. Well, for anybody who doesn't know Carrie-Anne, I'm just going to do a quick intro. She's a writer. She's an actress. She's a mother. She's a space holder for women to connect with themselves. She's a dear friend of mine, and she has been a huge part of the inspiration for this new Flower Hunters docuseries. We originally went to New Hampshire to do a flower lounge event. We crashed her house and did a sleepover, and one of her friends, Dick, was going on and on and on and on about this series called Itchy Boots. And we got so intrigued, thanks to Dick and thanks to you, that when we were in Wyoming, we just decided to do our own series. So thank you for being here, and thanks
Oh,
for being the inspiration.
my pleasure. That was so fun. Just all sitting around the couch watching Itchy Boots. And, there's nothing, I just love, being able to sit in my living room and go on these experiences where people are out in the world. Um, and we can sit there and sort of live vicariously through them. And I've seen the first episode of your show, and I'm super excited about it. So, so lovely. I'm thrilled that you're showing people what it takes to do what you do. And I think the thing that gave me goosebumps as I was watching it was just your genuine, and I know this to be true because you're my friend, your genuine, heartfelt purpose in what you do. And in a world of materialism and everyone is selling something, you so genuinely want to help humanity to rise above the darkness. And I know that's true. And I think it really comes across in the way that you show and share how you go about finding these different plants, why you're doing it. It's just, it's so profound and so beautiful. And I just adored watching it. I want to go on one with you. Maybe you'll have like guests on your show and I can come. I want to be in that Sprinter van. I want to be looking for flowers. Oh,
Yes,
it's
deal. Okay,
gorgeous.
you pick the place around the world you want to go to, and we'll go together.
Okay, let's do it. Let's really make that happen. I'd love that.
It's so silly. I mean, I feel like I'm a different person now than I was even then when we shot it. But I can't wait for you to see episode three. That the last part of episode three, you're gonna totally just cry. It's so good. It's so good. I can't wait for you to see that. Um, so maybe like we can just kind of ask each other some questions, and
Mm.
I have some questions for you around like because a lot of the idea around this particular show in Wyoming was like how we make things hard versus how we allow more wildness and freedom. And I was wondering if you want to share anything about like, this habit that sometimes we have to make things hard versus allowing in more freedom and wildness.
Yeah, I think you were an example of that when you were here and you were looking for a flower when you were here. And I remember we were sitting around the kitchen table. My husband was there, Dick was there, and Dick's got his maps out. And it was like you could just feel like, oh, this is going to be hard from us, the people who've never done it. And you and your team just had this ease. And you said you got out of the car and you walked like a couple of feet, and there it was just waiting for you. And I just was like, wow, I tend to think things have to be hard. I mean, I have to really, um, I'm not going to say fight that, but release that and be open to ease and flow. And I think one of the things that helps me is that I love discipline, but I root it in devotion. And when I root it in devotion, getting up super early in the morning to light a candle and close my eyes and move my body and meditate is easeful and beautiful. It's not a struggle. I don't have any obstacles to get there like I did when I was younger. And I thought my practice needed to be really tough and really hard and hours and whatnot. Now I'm like, light a fire, light a candle, have a coffee, and sit and look outside. Sometimes it's a meditation, sometimes it's reading or whatever. That's a great example of of allowing the ease to come into my life, trusting. I think the biggest obstacle for that is fear. And so I try to acknowledge when I'm in fear and do what I can to not feed it. And that's something that I'm pretty, committed to when I can catch myself, because sometimes it's just those certain things that trigger us, right? And get us down that road of being fearful. So, yeah, I love being in flow. I love when things just easily open up, and it's a great feeling.
It's a good feeling. I love that. So you let it come in through devotion.
Yeah, devotion is really the doorway for me for most things. I was talking to a friend today about even like parenting, like when my kids were little, everyone would talk about how hard it was, so hard and rah, rah, and I just refused to think like that. And so I created my own reality. And, the more that if I talked to people in that way or was surrounded by people who thought like that, then I was going to experience that. And I just didn't want that. So I made that decision. Even talking to a friend the other day about a medical thing they're going through, and they started talking about themselves in a way that they were older, like, at my age, kept saying at my age. And I said, okay, let's stop for a minute. You're so youthful and vibrant and like, and he said, oh, well, that's how, the doctors and stuff were talking because he is older. And he was like, but you're right. That's not the truth of me. I said, yeah, it's not the truth. So words have power. Words are like a spell. And, hopefully we have friends like I did for him and, other friends do for me, catch each other and say, hey, is that really what you want to be saying and putting into the world, into your experience? Is that how you want to talk about yourself? So, I love doing that for other people. And I have a lot of people that do that for me when I get caught in negativity or whatever. How about you? I mean, you are such a great example. I feel like you really live in that easeful mindset most of the time. When I'm around you, you have that really calming way around you about you.
I mean, I would say for me, it's the same as you. It's devotion. It's like that's the number one priority in every situation I find myself, no matter what the challenge is like, how can I benefit myself, my loved ones, all sentient beings? How can I make this like beneficial for everyone? And looking at everything through that lens, everything just kind of falls away.
Mm-hmm.
Not that
All the
life is
noise.
always easy. I
Yeah,
mean,
no.
there's noise. There are definitely times where it's like monkey mind.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's what's the most beneficial here for everyone, and that brings me to my knees, and that makes things really clear in every situation.
Yeah.
So how do you experience, or how do you word this question? Like the theme of this series is wild and free,
Mm.
and since I feel like I was walking here the other morning thinking, yeah, in 2020 we had this huge 2021, this like massive worldwide phenomenon of purification, where we all got to take a look at various different forms of fear and ways that it showed up and hardship. And I feel like the world is kind of stabilized since then. Everybody's got like some ground under their feet. And now we're really kind of like, how do I feel more wild and free in my body? How do I express myself more? How do I, dance and sing and or like speak the truth, or be myself in a world where maybe people are different. So
Mm.
are there any like ideas you want to share around like courage to be more wild and free, or for whatever that is for each person?
Well, I think I've been listening to, I think I shared it with you, that book on tape, Clarissa Pinkola Estes's book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. I'm reading that again, or listening to that again. She's got such a beautiful voice. It's so calming. She talks a lot about the wild feminine. I think, freedom, to feel free enough to be yourself, like, is something that is a birthright
Mm.
and at the same time deeply earned. Because I think when we're really little, it's a natural state of being for most children. And then we go through adolescence where all of a sudden we don't want to be different. We want to fit in. There's the rare person who, you know, doesn't feel that way, but most teenagers kind of go through that. And we go through our 20s and our 30s, you know, ebbing and flowing with that, I'm sure, right? I can barely remember. But I do feel that I've always wanted to feel free within my soul, within my spirit. I used to always love that saying, and I'm not sure I'm going to say it right, but to dance as if no one was watching. Do you remember that saying? Like I used to always just feel like there was some kind of portal in that I didn't really understand as a young woman, but that I understood what that could be, like to be that free, that I didn't care what anyone thought of me. And I think as you get older, for me anyway, I really care a lot less what other people think. And that is such a gift in getting older. So I think it's a journey, and there's places where we get stopped. I welcome those places that I get stopped because that's where the most growth comes. So I never try to like think, oh, my life has to be a certain way and it has to be, I hate performative life, right? Like that's why I don't really do a lot on the social media stuff. Like I don't feel comfortable in that realm, even though it's what I do for work is, perform. But in order to do what I do in my work, I have to feel free enough. I have to feel safe. So for me to be on set and be able to be free, I have to have done my work, my homework. So I need to have a foundation, right? I have to learn my lines, for instance. There's my foundation. I have to know my lines backwards, frontwards, inside out. I have to do the homework. I have to know, who's this character? What does she want? What do I want in the scene? And then I have to go to work and I have to, well, this is one of the things that I do. And I think this is all relevant to life. I look at the people around me, all the crew, and I go, if I can feel supported by this group of people, I can be free. Now, if I'm in there thinking, oh, what do the crew think of me? Like, oh, do they think I got old? Or are they judging me? Or do they, whatever, whatever the judging is. If I feel that a little bit, I got to break through that. And that's pretty easy to break through. What you do is you put your attention on other people and you're curious and you get to know people and you care about them. And then guess what? They care about you. So then that's right away. You have a safe environment, right? You can feel safe because you have invested in caring about other people. And in return, they care about you. And then all the homework and all the stuff, all the foundation, it's there, but you don't think about it. You let it go. And in between action and cut, you're free enough to work off the other person, to see them and hear them and feel them. So life is kind of the same way. Do you have good structures in place that hold you up when you're of sound mind and you're feeling good? You got your journal out and you're feeling like, oh, you can dream well because your brain's on in a good way. You're not in fight or flight and all that stuff. And you got some good foundational principles. And then you let it go and you live and you do your dishes and you drive your kid to school and you have dinner with your family and you snuggle your dogs and you go to work and you're nice to people and you care about them and they care about you and you're kind to the grocery store clerk and you know about her family and you ask about her. And I mean, it's pretty simple, but we forget when we get into our minds of like how things should be, and we live in fantasy, or we think, oh, they've got it figured out. My life just doesn't look like that. So my life must suck. I mean, that's the worst. And I think in this day and age with all social media, it's tough to stay pure and true to yourself, but you just keep bringing it back, bringing it back.
Love it. It's so true. How do you teach moms how to have more freedom?
Well, I'm not a teacher at all. I'm just a sharer of
You
experiences, which I do.
do, you do.
Well, I love storytelling and I like writing. I got a Substack and I write about life in there. And I have my website, Annapurna Living, that I've had for like 10 years, which is truly a labor of love. And that's how you and I met. So I'm so grateful with mothers. And there's no secret. It's really, bringing your attention to yourself and to, know where you may need some care and love and work. And, understand that your relationship with your children is a living, breathing thing. I think one of the biggest things that I see mothers struggle with, especially as their children are getting older, is nostalgia and getting too caught up in the fantasy of nostalgia and not being able to be present with where your children are now. And I find it hard, especially with the iPhone, sharing all the pictures from 15 years ago on this day. And, it's hard to let go of, your children are becoming their own people, grown-ups and their own individuated human beings. And I just think, respect the relationship, respect yourself, and just know there's always something to grow. There's always places to grow and to shift, and stay open to that, and, care about it. It's my most honored thing as being a mom, for sure. So I've loved it, and I love it. And my kids are my favorite people. And they were when they were babies, and they still are my favorite people. They're so fun, and I'm so lucky. We're all, lucky to have these children to pass on what we know and for them to teach us so that we grow. And I think that's the other thing is as my children get older, like to just make sure that I'm not always in the teacher mode, right? Like, don't you know like how it feels when you're with somebody where they have been a teacher for you, and whenever you're with them, you always are the student. And we do have some of those teachers. I know, spiritual teachers where that dynamic is there. But, I love when that shifts and suddenly there's wisdom that you're sharing, and you want to give that same grace to your children.
Wow. So how would you feel if we went on a trip somewhere? You get to choose where. We do a flower hunters series, and we,
Oh
we
my
go
gosh.
we go and hunt for some flowers. Would that be strange to be yourself on camera versus?
No, I would love that. It'd be so easy with you. Yeah, no, I would love that. That would be so fun. I just would, but I prefer that you pick the place because
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, you pick the place and just let me know, and I'll be there. I'm not sure I'm driving that van though. That van looked a little challenging to drive. But I remember we did an RV trip when my kids were little, and I loved it. We did like 6 weeks. I loved it because it was so manageable. Like suddenly, like your level of like expectation just goes so simple. Like the simplest things become decadent. And I love that so much when, I remember traveling and going to a farm stand, and it was like a farmer's market, and it was closing, and they had like, yeah, they had like some broccoli, and a black tomato. It was like an heirloom, but it was black, and no one wanted to buy it. And it was the only thing they had left, this one stand. So I got it, and I cooked it up, the broccoli, with just like, olive oil and some garlic, and cut the tomato up. And it was so incredibly delicious, in part because we were in the middle of nowhere and hadn't had anything that fresh. And it was just amazing. And I loved, caring for the RV. It was like easy, and I could get it done. And it was just about being together. And I just loved it. It was just such a fun experience.
Wow.
Did you love that? Did you like when you're flower hunting, when you were in the RV or the Sprinter van? Did you feel that sort
Oh
of
my God.
simplifying of everything?
Yeah, I mean, you're making pour over coffees through a paper towel, and just
Hmm.
bathing in rivers and bathing in hot springs and getting fresh air and sunshine the whole time. And it just strips away everything. It strips everything down to its like most essential nature. And there's so much peace. And like, when you're in some of these places like national parks, and you feel that just feels so grand. And, I feel so tiny in comparison. But
Hmm.
in that tininess, I feel like I've become I become that greatness. There's no separation.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a great exercise in reminding us who we really are. How did you come up with Annapurna? That's in Nepal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I was away working in Toronto. I was doing a movie, and it was the first time that I'd gone on location without my kids. And I think my youngest child was like 4. And I went away. I was in Toronto, and I was suddenly had all this extra mental space, I guess. That's the thing that I think being a mother is kind of hard to explain, is just the amount of mental um, architecture that you need in order to kind of be in it the day to day. So I was suddenly out of that, of course, still holding all of that because you do, you do anyway. But I had more space. And so I was working, being creative, meeting new people in a new apartment. I had a bike, so I rode my bike all over Toronto. And I saw that there was a restaurant in Toronto called Annapurna. And it was I think, an Indian restaurant. I believe. And I got on my bike and I rode like an hour to this place, and it was closed. And I turned around and I rode back, and I didn't even care. Like, I didn't even care that it was closed. Like, I knew there was some experience. That's something I've always been able to do. Like, if I get lost in traffic, like I go, oh, I'm trusting that I'm meant to be doing this, as long as I don't have somewhere I have to be, whatever. So I rode my bike back, but I kept hearing the word Annapurna, Annapurna, Annapurna. And the word just suddenly became something that was speaking to me. And I looked it up, and of course, it's a mountain range, but it's also the goddess of nourishment and grains. And, there's an image of her like pouring these grains. And so I started thinking about my website. I started writing content, just dreaming it up. I was working with someone at the time that was helping me like with the website and stuff. And I suddenly thought I want it to be Annapurna Living, because as a mother, and when I got home and I looked around, and especially in LA where I was raising my kids, like all of us moms and myself included, I would see myself with like sunglasses on in my SUV, pedal to the metal, like racing from point A to point B, getting them to soccer practice, getting them to this practice, getting to the grocery store, dropping them off at school, trying to do a little bit of work, whatever that looked like. And it was just always rushing. I was always rushing and stressed. And I started to think to myself, Annapurna, the goddess of nourishment. And I would just inhale that word, and I would unfurl my brow. I would slow down within the rush of it all. And I started thinking, that's what I want to share, is that our children have one childhood. We have one experience, we have one segment of time doing this, that if we can learn to relax in the busyness of all of it, we're going to really enjoy it a lot more. And so I would just feel myself grip and be in it. And I'd say Annapurna, Annapurna Living. And that's where it started. That's where it started. It just became kind of like a way of life that I needed desperately. I was so like, I wouldn't say that I'm certainly not a type A in terms of like my brain, in terms of like academia or anything like that. But in terms of like kind of tight and busy and high strung, I guess you would say. Everything I do on Annapurna Living, everything I've written, all the blog posts, all the courses I've offered have been because I've needed them. Not because I'm an expert, but because I was like, wow, like I really need this and I don't see it anywhere. So I'm going to make it for myself. And if anybody wants to join me and, fall in love with cleaning their house, which is a course that I offer called Holding Home, which transformed my whole life. I love cleaning my home. And I started that because I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't like it. I just walk around in circles thinking, ugh, another dishwasher, another this, another that. Oh my gosh. And I was like, okay, this is a big part of my life. So if I can transform this, I can transform anything. And I did. I transformed it where I'm like, and that's a miracle. I don't even want to intellectualize that too much, because I thought maybe, I'd read some books that had talked about, bringing this sort of devotion, right? This devotion again, this care for your life. Like, what's more important, caring for your life or, I don't know, being on your phone? I guess, we're on our phones. Yeah.
Nothing more important. Nothing more important.
Yeah.
I know I feel the same way. All the flower essences that I collect, I feel like they're for me. I feel like I need them as well.
Hmm.
And maybe we should go to Annapurna. Maybe we should go to Nepal.
Oh my gosh, that would be really cool. That would be really amazing. I'd only go with you because I just know that you and I would, there's just something about our chemistry that would just feel so good. So good.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, and I
Um,
love I love when I have all of your remedies like on my right where I wash the dishes. I have like a little altar there and I'll have the sprays and I'm constantly spraying, constantly adding to my water and the way that you share about it, like one of the things that you say that I share with people, and maybe you can share because you say it so well, is if a certain percentage of the world started to use flower essences, if you could say that and explain that for people, I
yeah,
find that.
my teacher had originally said to me, as to how I got hooked, he said if 3% of the world's population were actively working with these flower remedies, it would create enough of a ripple effect that it would change the future of this planet. And at the
Mm,
time, I didn't really understand what that meant. It sounded good. I was like, I'm in. Um, but after, really seeing, like, especially in 2020 and 2021, seeing what happens when there are masses of people feeling a certain thing, I could see how, yeah, there is quite a big ripple effect, and energy is contagious. And we can also have contagious joy, and we can have contagious empowerment, and we can have contagious courage and expression, and how flower remedies so powerfully unlock these, self limitations inside of us and liberate who we really are, our true nature. And then I could see where that's possible. And it's also so inspiring because so many of us want to be of benefit in the world. We all want to help people.
hmm.
And how, right? And then when you realize that it's not really based on external effort, it's not like how many charities I can help, how much I can give, or how it's like one of the most powerful ways we can show up in the world is how do I unpack my own patterns and how do I, like you said, approach life with more devotion and work through challenges and be a better, more expressed, more powerful version of ourselves. And that's what really gives other people the permission to do the same. And so in
Hmm.
that way, we just create this tremendous, contagious beauty around the world.
Yeah, I like to always say like, who am I being? Right. I remember when my children were little and I was looking at schools and it was so confusing. They all offered different kinds of education. And my husband and I were debating on, which school is it the one, this one has a great library, this one has a science department, this has this. And, they're like 3 and 5. And we just looked at each other and we really came to the understanding that it was, were the adults there worthy of imitation,
Whoa.
right?
Wow.
And that became why we chose the school that we chose. Not because it had the greatest X, Y, and Z, but because we felt that the grown-ups were worthy of imitation. And then, of course, you want to bring that back to yourself. Am I worthy of imitation? And when we aren't, because sometimes we're not, because of our whatever, I have found that my children have inspired me to stretch and heal and change and transform. I'm
Oh,
constantly obsessed with how do I transform whatever this challenge and not to push it and not to intellectualize it, but to make room and open to the possibility of transformation. And I think that's what your flower essence is. I have like goosebumps just thinking about it because you'll say to me, I'll say, I'm going through this, and you'll be like, put this in your water, 5 drops, every mason jar. And it's like, yeah. And you don't think about it. You're not like, tallying. Have I changed? Has it this? Has it that? Suddenly you're on the other side. Something new is opened and you go, wow, I feel different. And I don't have to have proof. I don't have to have a study, right? I don't need a study that, scientific proof that that transformed. You just know, right?
You
So
just,
cool. You just know.
I had this aha moment yesterday when I was talking to a friend from Nepal, and in Nepal they often say, they have this saying where it translates into, I'm proud of you. And I was like, I had to ask one of my friends, like, why do people keep saying they're proud of me? Like, are they proud of did I do something? And luckily I had this Nepali friend, who explained what it really means more like, I'm proud to know you. And I realized, whoa, that's so different from like the Western world where I would say like, I'm proud of your accomplishment, or, I'm proud you did your homework well, or I'm proud you did such a great job at school, or I'm proud you did this, right? And it's all based on accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this other way, in Nepal, when they say like, I'm proud to be your friend, it's like, I'm proud of who you are. I'm proud of who you're being. I'm proud of the effortlessness of who you are right now without having to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's really refreshing. Anyway, I'm proud of your beingness.
Right back at you.
So I just wanted to share, if anybody is interested in the Flower Hunter series. It's kind of a crazy, vulnerable, silly. It's not sophisticated in any way, shape, or form, but it comes from devotion. And so I'd love to invite anyone to join us on YouTube, and that's at LOTUSWEI. Thank you so much for being the inspiration, Carrie-Anne, for us doing crazy things in the mountains and the forests. And I really look forward to the day when we can have you come with us.
Yeah, I would love it. I would love it. Let's do it. And
if you want more of Carrie-Anne's wisdom, she has a beautiful Substack. It's not an account, but you have an expression on Substack, right?
Yeah, it's called Carrie-Anne Moss From Within. And I just write and do some audios. I have a library in there with some meditations for inspiration for people. And yeah, it's really it's a labor of love. So yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
I love you. Congratulations. I'm super excited. It's really cool. I love that you've taken an idea, put the work in, and now it's here. Like, that's huge. It's like easy to have ideas, not easy to execute them. And that's something that you're great at. So may other people be inspired by the seed of thought and ideas being manifested into reality, and that everyone can do that. May they be inspired through you. You doing that.
And you. May it be so.
Yeah. Love ya.
Love you. Thanks for your blessings.
Bye. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much for being here. Thank you guys for being with us. Appreciate it.